Call to order the public hearing on the proposed annual budget for the Town of Normal fiscal year 2019-2020. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Kus. Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mrs. Cummings?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
With public hearings, we ask 3 times at least if anyone is here to speak to the annual budget for the town. So the first call for any comments regarding the 2019-2020 Town of Normal budget. Mr. Ulmer? Please state your name for the record and your address if you care to offer that. Thank you.
My name is Ron Ulmer. I'm a resident of Normal, and thank you, Councilperson Fritzen, I guess Mayor Pro Tem tonight, for allowing me to speak. I just have a couple of general comments. We kind of wonder why the cost of government seems to, in many cases, be out of control and why budgets are so tight. So I have been watching the last few years Connect Transit. Connect Transit, the last numbers I could find available on the internet at their website, in 2017 was the first time since 2012 their fares, the fare revenue increased since 2012, and over this period, the fare revenue finally increased 5.6%. Local subsidies went from $866,000, that's what Bloomington and Normal pay, in 2012, to in 2017, $2,165,000, a 150% increase. During this time, federal grants went from $6.7 million to $12 million to Connect Transit, a 79% increase. Cost of living during this period went up 5.3%. Now, I know the city managers of both cities, Bloomington and Normal, are members of the transit board, not pro tem, but adjunct like members. I can't think of the word right now. But anyway, they go to the meetings. You are welcome to go to the meetings. My question is, how do you council members, the mayors, what goes on? Don't you question why these revenues went up so slowly and the expenses went up so fast? It's like nobody's watching what's going on. And that's just one example. And we know that they moved a lot of their stops. And I was at one meeting where a woman from Chestnut Health Systems talked. And she said they moved the bus stop that their people used way out away from the facility. She says, I can't believe we lost our bus stop. All this kind of stuff went on during these 5 years. And who watches? Why do you allow yourself to, the Town of Normal and Bloomington to contribute 150% more over 5 years? Does no one, I don't know what goes on. I went to the budget planning meeting. I never heard Connect Transit mentioned. One other thing I have is, all the municipalities complain about no money. Bloomington Normal, or McLean County, has the highest median income by far of any county in the state. That's compared to Champaign, Cook, Peoria, Sangamon, and Tazewell. I was looking at Normal's salaries, total compensation and all. I don't want to get into the detail, and I know I don't have the time. But about 3/4 of Normal's employees make more than the median income for McLean County than the household median income, which is $63,000. So why do we have to increase water rates, taxes? Why did Unit 5 have to increase taxes so much? Why is Illinois headed for another unbalanced budget? Why does Pritzker's budget include another pension holiday like we don't have enough pension problems already? Why does state income tax need to be increased? Why does Illinois lead the 50 states in outmigration on a percentage basis? While there are many contributing factors to the elephant in the room, the lifetime compensation of public employees, including their retirement benefits, is one of the problems. Why is, and I know this isn't yours directly, but I would hope you'd be working with the local legislators in Springfield, why is Governor Edgar collect 3 different pensions from the state? And he was the one that passed the 3% increases in, he was governor when they wrote that into the Constitution, that public employees would get the 3% increases.
You wrap it up, Mr. Ullman.
Okay, I
Try
will.
to keep the comments directed to the town of Normal budget.
All right. So with the average increases that the town gives, plus the compensation increases in pension, in the last 10 years during the Great Recession, the problem is that the town employees, while I appreciate them all and all, they have much bigger benefits, or their benefits are increasing at a more rapid rate than the private sector, and this is why we have the tax problems we have and the revenue problems we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Second call for public comment regarding the proposed annual budget for the town of Normal. And a third call for any comments regarding the town of Normal budget. Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye. The public hearing is adjourned. Call to order the regular town council meeting for March 4th, 2019. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Kus? Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mrs. Cummings?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
Begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business is the Omnibus vote agenda. This is several items that can be approved with one motion. Ask if there are any items council wishes to remove or remarks regarding any of the omnibus vote items.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Before we move on that, Mr. Ulmer, you asked me have some public comments, so it's in addition to the other? Okay, sorry. We'll come back to the omnibus, thanks.
I want to make a comment on affordable housing, mostly questions. My question is, and I usually get very good cooperation both from the town of Normal and ISU whenever I ask a question. We talk about affordable housing, and I keep wondering, since it's only a few blocks from my house, what is happening with Shelbourne Apartments? And at ISU, I keep getting a different person, and no one calls me back. So I don't know, I just throw that out. Is that a possibility for affordable housing in the town of Normal, or to work with the university? You know, a few years ago, the most common word when people were campaigning and all was collaboration. And at the public hearing on the block grants, I talked about collaborating with other government entities. So my question is there something, and ISU's talking about increasing housing, is there some way the town of Normal and ISU can work together? Just a side comment. I've sold 3 of my 5 income properties, as this is my 41st year as a landlord in Normal. And I knew this would happen. Mine were affordable and very well maintained. They could almost find nothing wrong with any of the 3 buildings I sold November 1st. But now the rent's going up about $165 and they'll become student apartments for 1-bedroom apartments. So, and that was very within walking distance to Uptown. And my price, the Pantograph said they couldn't find any 1-bedroom units in Normal below $525, and I had some. So that, I was a provider of affordable housing in the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, now we'll go to the omnibus vote agenda. Again, a motion to approve.
Move
Second.
approval.
Okay. Any items, any of the council people wish to remove from consideration, or I ask to be excused from voting on a Bloomington offset bill? Okay, before we vote, the items on the agenda this evening are the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 18th, approval of town and normal expenditures for payment as of February 27th, a resolution authorizing the execution of an agreement with Mr. Craig Onsrud for the operation of the Ironwood Golf Course Pro Shop and private golf lessons, a resolution conditionally reapproving the final development plan for Phase 2 of the J&M PUD, which is the one located at Cottage Avenue and Village Court, a resolution authorizing the filing of Amendments 1 and 2 to the town's Community Development Block Grant 5-year consolidated plan, a resolution waiving the formal bidding process and authorizing a contract with J. Spencer Construction, LLC for the replacement of gutters and fascia at the Normal Theater in the amount of $27,015. An ordinance authorizing the publication of a zoning map, a motion authorizing the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the town of Normal and the Ecology Action Center regarding the Solar Bloomington Normal program. And that's it for the omnibus vote agenda. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye. Those items are approved. Under general orders, the first item of business is an ordinance adopting the operating and capital investment budget for the town of Normal for the fiscal year 2019-20.
Move approval. Second.
Any comment? For those in the audience and those who might be watching on streaming or later, we did have a separate session to consider the budget earlier in January, day-long session. Mr. Ulmer referred to that earlier in his comments. And the capital investment aspect of it, capital projects, we cover under another separate meeting. So a lot went into this other than just this formal procedure here tonight. So clerk, please call the roll.
Wait, I thought
Oh,
of
sorry.
something. That's okay. I was
Yeah.
trying to catch your attention. Since it was brought up in comment, and I would just ask that, does staff have any comments about the dollars going for Connect Transit and how the future of that looks at this point, or?
Just very briefly, the Connect Trans, I do serve as an ex officio member of the Connect Transit Board along with City Manager Tim Gleason. And the council actually appoints a representative to represent the citizens and this body on the board. Connect Transit actually does have scheduled a public hearing on an increase in the fares, which they have not had a fare increase in a number of years. And so that is something that the board is considering and will be taking public comment, I believe, in a week or so. And more information on the timing of that public hearing is probably available on their website, I'm sure. I don't recall the exact date. In regard to the history of Connect Transit funding, I don't feel like I'm adequately prepped to talk about that right now, but certainly we can explore that further in terms of what it looks like, what their future looks like, and their financial situation. We can share that with the council.
Yeah, do they come and give us I feel like they've come and given us a update or report? Maybe
Yes,
that would be something.
they haven't in a while.
Okay.
Isaac Thorne, I believe, just talked to the Bloomington City Council perhaps just last week or
Okay.
just very recently. So I know that he will be working on a date to come do a presentation to this body soon to talk about what's happening with Connect Transit.
And if I may just add one comment, I do know that they've been holding some listening sessions with their community bus going around the community, and I went to one, and I feel like they are definitely trying to hone their schedules and their routes, and from what I can tell, are trying to do the best with what they have, in terms of financial resources. So, but I think I would very much support a presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think at times, you hear the federal subsidies, and sometimes there's local subsidies are necessary in order to leverage the federal subsidies and things of that nature. I know we felt that one thing holding Connect Transit back was the fact that it was underfunded, considerably underfunded, and not serving the needs of an underserved portion of our community. And so, the sales tax increase, that a percentage of that, the last sales tax increase was directed their way and whatever. So I mean, it's an intentional increase for something that really was not being funded at a level it needed to be. Mr. McBride?
Just on a related note, I think it's probably important that we mention, just for everybody watching, that in that time that was referred to earlier, Connect Transit did begin offering Sunday service. And obviously that doesn't explain everything, but that is a big part of the increase, and that is one of the reasons that this body decided to take the action it did with the sales tax increase at the time.
I believe, too, the routes, far be it from us to try to determine the best places to run the buses, but I think that's part of them trying to be more cost-efficient and more responsive to needs, and sure, there are probably places other than just the one that was mentioned earlier that people were used to and didn't want to see their stop taken away, but those things weren't done cavalierly, they were done after study. So ridership kind of helps dictate some of that, I'm sure. Mr. McCarthy?
I just want to further on what's already been said is we're reminiscing a bit on Connect Transit history that about the time that we undertook the sales tax increase to help not only fund operations and capital projects for them, but there were some matching dollars that they were leaving on the table but for the lack of local funding, principally, it was sitting out there that they weren't getting to take advantage of. And just a reminder that when they came there, a large portion of their fleet was well beyond their useful life, and that they were able to take our funding and leverage some group of purchases and actually bought some gently used buses and some newer buses to replace a very, very aging fleet. So there's actually quite a bit that Connect Transit was able to do with our intentional funding increase. On a separate but budget-related comment, this time of year we tend to get some road repair comments as the spring thaw is coming and all the freeze-thaw cycle is becoming apparent, and hopefully you've all been safe out there. But when we went through this in our budget hearing and our budget summary from our finance director, Mr. Hune, I was really pleasantly excited to see that over the proposed 5-year budget we have just over $66 million in capital infrastructure projects, and if you take into account this year's budget, the proposed nearly $22 million, we have almost $90 million of infrastructure projects in this proposed budget that we're voting on tonight. So it's a significant amount of public investment in our infrastructure to make sure that our community continues to run well. So I'm very proud to see that we're taking those steps.
It is a 5-year budget, by the way. So $90 million, 5-year budget. So, but in keeping with what we've been doing here for a couple of decades at least, our 5-year budget, things we project that we're going to do, we have funding in line for those things as well. It doesn't mean that something won't change next year that's out there in a fourth or fifth year, but we don't just put hoped for things in the budget without identifying funding for those things. So, any other comments before we vote? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye. Budget is approved. Our next item under general orders is an ordinance amending Division 7 of the municipal code regarding water rates.
Move approval?
Second.
Again, this was an item that we discussed quite a bit of length, I think, during our budget session. Any comments this evening from the council? Ms. Lorenz?
Well, I'm never been a big fan of this, so I just want to go on record as saying that, I still would advocate for a pause on this annual bump in light of some of the other fee increases that we've had to put in play for rate restructures on sewer and on garbage as well. And since that all hits the same bill, I'm just putting my plug in again for that consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Preston?
Kind of going along with Ms. Lorenz's comments, I would tend to agree, and I know that we will be looking at a more comprehensive rate study within the next year or two for the, looking at our water rates. And, just when I look at our 5-year projections, it doesn't look like in the first year that this 2% increase is needed, as that, will allow us 28% operating reserve compared to our 20% target. But yet in the out years, the 2% likely doesn't look like it will cover our projections, hence the rate study. I think we'll probably get into considerably more depth with that. And as a result, I'm just not sure I see the need for the 2% right now, taking into account some of the things that Councilwoman Lorenz also mentioned as well. So, just my 2 cents on it.
Others? Clerk, please call the roll.
Wait.
Oh,
No, I think
Mr.
Yeah.
McCarthy? Okay.
Yeah. Although I share my counterparts' sensibilities or sensitivities rather to the budget, I know actually Mr. Fritchen, you can probably comment more directly as you were sitting in one of these chairs during the time that the city fell dramatically behind in capital funding for water projects. And I guess I've probably said this every year since I've been on this council, since the last rate study, that we don't want to go back there, particularly if what we know about our infrastructure right now shows us at a declining fund balance below what we feel comfortable with having, and that if we put off a relatively minor increase now, what we may find out is it's a much larger need later, and that we don't want to end up in a situation, refresh my memory, Mr. Fritzen, was it a 25% increase or a 50% increase in rates back then that you guys had to do because the infrastructure fund, the water fund fell so far behind. It was quite a hefty hit to the town of Normal residents' budgets at that time. So for me, I'd like to stay on a relatively minor, pretty minor increase to make sure that we don't fall farther behind and have to really sock it to the normal taxpayers at one time with a large increase.
Others? I don't recall the exact percentage, but
That's all right.
It was way overdue, and we hadn't done a study, maybe in recent memory anyway, at the time we did the study. And I think part of the, unlike a lot of your assets, water and sewer are things that you can't see. You can inspect certain aspects of those systems with television and the like, but usually when there's a failure, it's not necessarily something that, it's not planned obsolescence. So it's important to have a good, solid reserve. And I think, we had a pretty, like I said, lengthy discussion during the budget session about whether, you do this incrementally or you set it aside and whatever, and I respect that. And but again, for me, it's more prudent, especially since we've positioned ourselves the way we have since the last study, it's prudent to continue that course until another more in-depth study can be completed. Anything else? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
No.
Mr. Preston,
No.
Mr. McCarthy,
Yes. Aye.
Mr. McBride,
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings,
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen.
Aye. The motion passes. That brings us to new business. We have one item of new business this evening, and that's a presentation by Vasu Gadaraju of the McLean County Regional Planning Commission. And one of the subjects of her presentation this evening is affordable housing, which led to some of the comments earlier. And we appreciate, we're very appreciative of the work of the Regional Planning Commission. It's one of those under-the-radar groups in our community, but of course with us, with our comprehensive plan that isn't all that old yet. It's new and fresh and whatever, and they played a huge role in helping us get that done. So appreciate that as well. So Vasu, take it away.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. Thank you so much for your time today. Sorry.
This is supposed to be in a different, is it not working?
I mean, it's,
Terry's on.
Hell, yeah.
sorry about that. Anyway, thank you so much for your time today. And as we are getting the presentation ready, I just wanted to let you know that since we completed the normal comprehensive plan in 2017, we have been working closely with both Bloomington and normal staff to identify projects that regional planning can help collaborate across agencies for implementation. And I did distribute a few handouts that you have. I will not be able to go into depth on any of those subjects, but I'm happy to answer any questions. The few projects that I would like to highlight is definitely as an MPO and a regional planning agency, our interest is in projects that that have both transportation and land use connection. We call it TLC for short. So definitely several projects fall under that umbrella. We have both Bloomington and normal passed complete streets policies. And as part of that, we have undertaken a study to identify key intersections and key street segments that would be prioritized for any grant funding or otherwise. So complete streets implementation study is currently underway. We also have a TLC grant, which is funded by State Metropolitan Planning Organization at IDOT. Oh, there we go. At IDOT, that helps fund projects that are specifically, again, helping implement comprehensive plan and long-range transportation plans. We also received a Vision Zero grant, which is focused on safety improvements in the community. And there is an RFQ out there to conduct that study. We also have another grant that's currently in progress. It's integrating health and transportation corridors. We are focusing on Main Street. Again, we've been focusing on Main Street for studies and plans for the past 15 years, but this is specifically focused on incorporating health. Last but not the least, we are looking at manuals of practice for both Bloomington and normal to identify opportunities where planning and codes are different and should be aligned more. Again, I will not be able to go into details in any one of these, but happy to answer questions after this. Our greenways efforts have been enhanced. So if you've seen articles in Panagraph, WGLC, GLT, this is because a lot of volunteers are working relentlessly on trying to promote our natural areas. We are not all corn and bean. There are many beautiful natural areas that we want to promote. Groups are working on integrating Common Core curriculum into getting students and teachers out into our natural areas. And Regional Planning Commission is working closely with both the city and the town and the county on data, technology, and smart city issues. So on that note, I would definitely highlight April 10th Community Information Forum that will be focused on autonomous vehicles, a topic that will be very related to our community. Our speaker is Carla Bailo from CAR, Center for Automotive Research from Michigan. Census 2020 will be here soon, and we are actually coordinating efforts, particularly on hard-to-count population. And as a college town, this is an important subject for us, and we want to have a coordinated effort. So today's presentation, I will try to focus mostly on the regional housing initiatives, and if time permits, maybe show you the new BN Vitals 2.0. So the BN Home Regional Study was completed in 2017. The findings are incorporated into Town and Normal Comprehensive Plan. Again, to give you a quick reminder, key findings, this is something that's not newsflash to us. Our growth rate has slowed down, and hence our demand for housing. We also found out that McLean County generally was overbuilt, and the type of housing was a general mismatch between where we were looking for. Along with that, we also recognize that the amount of growth can actually be accommodated within the approved plans and annexation agreements. From an affordability perspective, overall, when we look at median numbers, yes, as has been pointed out earlier, McLean County is generally have higher median incomes. So our numbers at median levels look very affordable. However, there are some key gaps in low-income households and for elderly households on limited income ranges. And we have gaps in homeless options for homeless population, younger people with mobility issues, and supportive housing issues. So as soon as the study was completed, Regional Planning Commission brought together a team to create a regional housing advisory committee. And one of the reasons for this is we didn't want to sit on it forever, and we wanted to get started quickly. And what we realized in that process is the findings of the study were diverse, and we could not have just one group addressing all of those to have meaningful impact. So we divided that into 4 different groups technically. PATH was doing a great job on homeless population, so we did not want to create a separate group just to address those. So we have been coordinating with that. The 3 other groups that we proposed was affordable and supportive housing group. This particularly invited 18 local agencies that are directly involved in providing housing, affordable housing and supportive housing services. We also have a housing staff committee. This is predominantly staff from Bloomington Normal, Bloomington Housing Authority, Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, and PATH, and Regional Planning Commission representatives, specifically to look at, all the advice that comes out of the advisory committee. We have to work on those, so the staff committee works on those. The last, but not the least, the Innovative Housing Solutions Committee. We haven't begun work on that yet. This is the committee that is technically supposed to be looking at aligning housing to our current demographic needs. Again, given the staff constraints, we were not able to get that going, but we recognize that needs to happen. So we wanted to tackle a lot of issues early on. And very quickly, it was like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. So we realized that we all have different definitions of what affordable housing meant. So definitely that became the first order of business. So you have in front of you a white paper that talks about what is affordable housing and what is affordable housing in McLean County. And what I will say is I think when we say affordable housing, a lot of us read with a subtext of low-income housing. And that's very common. We need to definitely get our definitions straight in this community before we can actually have meaningful dialogue about this. So affordable housing is essentially making sure that our housing for our community aligns with the economic status of our community. Yes, low-income housing is a big part of this. And so what we looked at is we called it dimensions, and we looked at 5 different dimensions of affordable housing. Number 1 is obviously income. So we have income qualified housing and market rate affordable housing. A lot of people who still need affordable housing probably are not qualified under HUD guidelines. So it's very important for us to look at those separate. The second one is provider. As soon as we say affordable housing, we quickly think it's public housing. Public housing is a very, very small portion of our overall affordable housing picture. So we need to look at public, nonprofit, and private sector affordable housing. Again, housing age. The best affordable housing is the housing that exists today. So preserving our existing housing should be a big part of our conversation as it relates to this. Typology. We think multifamily is the type of affordable housing. Yes, multifamily is a big portion of affordable housing, but single family is a part of that too. And funding, we have several different types of funding. Yes, we do not have local streamed funding, but we should look at those. So when we talk about affordable housing in all these dimensions, a lot of times these dimensions overlap quite a bit. So we need to look at this as a multidimensional subject. And we thought that first white paper, it was published by Regional Housing Staff Committee, which includes staff from all of our agencies. So we wanted to make sure our definitions are all aligned before we tackle the issue. Second thing, we wanted to make sure that you guys all have the right information, accurate information. So a quick question that you might ask, how many units of affordable housing or income qualified housing do we have in this community? You'll be surprised to know that it took us 4 months to get that information straight. And I am not kidding. This information is not presented in an easy to find format. A lot of times, a lot of these units have overlapping incentives, which makes it extremely hard to find out how many unique units we have that are affordable. So what we have here, with a big disclaimer, we are still working on making sure that this is in fact all unique. We think it is, and we will be publishing information soon on this. But definitely in McLean County, we have 70,000+ housing units. And we have about 5% of those that are income qualified units. And we have various types of income qualifications on this. Housing Authority has 600 units. Like I mentioned before, that is a very small percentage of overall affordable housing piece or income qualified housing piece. Definitely PBRA, we have 639 units, and low-income housing tax credits is a big piece of how a lot of private affordable housing happens. So why is this information important? When we talk about affordable housing, we absolutely have to look at how to bring more, but we have to focus on how can we retain existing affordable housing affordable. So in the next 5 years, we have close to 600 to 700 units getting ready to expire. So how do we make sure that we get on the front end of this? I don't have answers tonight, but I just want you to know that we are working on these. So within the next 5 years, the PBRA program, where if it expires, we will have an opportunity to convert those units into Section 8 choice vouchers, which may not be a bad thing. But we should have more and more apartment owners willing to accept those vouchers. LIHTC, on the other hand, if those expire, we may lose affordable rental units. In a market like ours, we don't know how much more the rents will go up, but what we do know is the quality of those units. It's very important for us to maintain those as quality affordable units. And after 30+ years, when the LIHTC credits expire, these are aging, and we need to make sure that they are they're available as quality affordable units. Again, we'll come out with more information on this soon. most of what we are talking about tonight is all published on our website, Projects and Programs BN Home, and we have several projects out there. I did not have enough time to talk about CDBG, so I will encourage you to go out there. And I also encourage you to go out there onto BN Vitals. We have over 220 different metrics comparing Bloomington, Normal, and McLean County to surrounding Central Illinois communities as well as the state. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Vasu, did you have an opportunity to, or were you hoping to have an opportunity to actually display one of those BN Vitals? If you
Yes.
could do that, that would be great. Just share that with council.
Yes, definitely. I just didn't want to take up too much
I
time.
appreciate that.
You've got time.
The regional planning staff, do you need to go backwards with that, your program, or is that not working?
Yes, I think. So in the meantime, I can answer any questions.
Well, I was just going to explain the BN Vitals is part of BN Advantage,
Yes.
but the statistics are very comprehensive and will be used for a number of purposes throughout the community, including a variety of economic development opportunities, so.
Yep.
We'll just start with Ms. Cummings and just work this way if anybody has any questions.
I really don't have, I would say, a question, but I want to, first of all, commend you on the presentation and bringing to the community's attention what truly affordable housing is. And for me personally, anybody who has talked to me know I hate using the word affordable housing because privileged people have a mindset that they stick with about it. And to me, I call it economically equitable housing because it's about the affordability, it's about diversity and variety of housing. And this is something that I'm passionate about when it comes to living standards, and I feel like we can do better. There are communities who are doing phenomenal work when it comes down to this type of housing and having market rate housing mixed in side by side, whether they're single families or whether they're multiple families. And I feel like I hate when communities feel like they need to isolate people because they are a part of our community no matter what. And so I would hope as we continue the conversation that we be more open-minded when it comes to the ugly word I hate to use, affordable housing, and how we see it, and how we see people who use affordable housing. And we need to talk about our housing stock. We don't offer enough housing for freshly graduated college students who doesn't necessarily need low-income housing, but they can't afford a home here in Normal. And we don't have enough apartment living that's feasible for their needs. We could talk about elderly people who want to reduce home sizes. They, raise families in probably larger homes, and now they want to downsize. There are studies out there that are showing that millennials want less space. There was a generation who wanted huge homes, lots of rooms, lots of space. I mean, there's a new craze with the smaller homes, what are they called, the mini homes, or, that is really a big thing right now. So we have to have a bigger, broader conversation. Affordable housing isn't about giving a handout to poor people, because that's not what it is. There is a piece that assists people for various reasons when it comes to income, but affordable housing, it's almost like a plate of food. You don't just have steak on it and you just don't have your vegetables. To have a well-balanced meal, you need all your food groups. And that's to have a real conversation about affordable housing.
Absolutely.
Mr. McBride?
Just next down the line, and again, I don't want to repeat a lot of what my colleague just said, but I know that one of my personal pet peeves are people misusing the term, specifically Section 8, without really any understanding of what that actually is. So my hope, or part of my hope, and what I'm hearing you say with this, is that this is also part of an educational process
Yes,
for the
absolutely.
community at large to understand exactly what these terms mean
Yes.
and what this does for all of us. So thank you.
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. McCarthy?
Sure. I just want to say thank you and fess up that I was ignorant of the topic, honestly, until we started doing our planning update, and I got to be part of it and started to open my eyes a little bit about what the issue is and really what the definition is and the variety of diversity that we lacked here. And for me, one of the more concerning things is the direction we were going with housing isn't the direction we need to be going with our housing and what we're doing and the implications for code and zoning and all of the things that we actually have the ability to begin to impact here to help to move housing in a direction in a limited way. Obviously, we're not developers, we're not private landowners, we're a municipal government, but we have a role to play, and you're helping to educate us and help show us the intersection of the things that we do and how we can support moving our community in that direction. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Preston?
Sure. Why not? Starting off, thank you. I don't want to be redundant with some of the comments of my colleagues already, but I appreciate your broad definition of our housing situation, be it affordable housing, diverse housing options, understanding the complexities of that. Thank you for that part of the presentation, and also putting some numbers behind it and putting some of our demographics of the community in comparison to the housing stock that we currently have, and maybe the needs that will rise down the line. So, as always, appreciate it, and nice job. Keep it up.
I got to give a thank you to Vasu too, and all I can say is that, I like to watch 60 Minutes, and they'll say, for more in-depth, go to our 60minutes.com or something, and I would like to go to vasu.com and get some more in-depth on this, so let me know where we meet afterwards. Thank you.
Definitely. And I will say that this has been a collaborative effort. I know we talked about collaboration here. I think the Regional Housing Initiative, we could not have done this. None of us would have been able to accomplish this individually, but collectively, we were able to, and definitely state housing authorities and federal housing authorities are recognizing this effort as unique effort. So thank you all for your cooperation and letting us do this. So BN Vitals, I know several of you probably have been here before, but this is BN Vitals 2.0, for lack of a better term. What we did with this is we have the very first tab when you go to any particular indicator is McLean County, and then there will be a map that specifically looks at census tract by census tract. And down here, you'll see a slider that shows various census ACS years. And as you move through the slider, you will be able to note the changes for various years. Again, to be able to tell a complete story, we have to compare ourselves to our peers. In this particular case, we've looked at Central Illinois comp cities. And this is the first time we also included data on rural communities in McLean County. So for rural communities who want to look at this, this would be a great resource. And for majority of these data points, you will see this. And what you'll also see when you get down to employment and businesses and entrepreneurship industries, you will see comparisons going across to a lot of local MSAs, but also anytime you see a BNA comp MSA, this was a comparison that Bloomington Normal Advantage study compared us to as they picked the right industries for us. So you have Des Moines and West Des Moines, Durham, Chapel, and Fort Collins metro areas that is comparing Bloomington Normal. So again, there are over 220 in here. I really encourage you to explore these.
Yeah, there's a lot of data on that website. Vasu has shared a handout, and lots of great information there, and her staff and her team have put a lot of time and energy into creating this, and we appreciate all the work they've done.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I too appreciated the white paper, and as in past council campaigns, I know the question about affordable housing has come up, and I was never, ever confident in how to answer the question, to be quite honest, kind of a confession like Mr. McCarthy's, but also I was never confident that the entity asking the question really knew what they were asking either. And so this is progress, is what it is, and it shows the value, I think, of some of the committee studies that we have done and been engaged in as a town for going back to starting with Mayor Harmon's first, committee to do some visioning for the town. And I think there's no question that there's a direct correlation between those types of endeavors and where Normal sits today compared to other communities. So I appreciate the foresight shown by some of our past leaders and others who have just continued the process, and all of us at different levels, at different points of time, have been involved in some of that. But I think right now it seems that we're really pushing the envelope a little harder in certain areas that need to be pushed. And I have 3 young adult children, all of whom have purchased homes at various times in McLean County or the town of Normal, and but one that is relocated to Charlotte, North Carolina, where when you tell people that, Charlotte, wow, I mean, that's a growing, bustling metropolitan area, and they have the same problems, just on a bigger scale. A young professional, a young family getting started and trying to find affordable housing for somebody who, does have a good income flow and a young family, but a difficulty finding, something that they can afford. And so I appreciate, Ms. Cummings too, highlighting that aspect of it, that it's not just this, it's across the board. It's equitable housing for many people and many demographics. So appreciate that. Before I ask for a motion to adjourn, opportunity for council to bring up any concerns they might have. Anyone comments tonight? Concerns? Very good. Ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.